Who's that? Commander Claw. Who's bad? Commander Claw.
Woo! Welcome back to another episode of Breaking Brews. I'm on the Marvel kick right now. I'm your host, Commander Claw, and I got the Sensational Spider-Man for you. I think it's very flavorful, actually. Yeah, it's an azorious commander. It's going to use stun counters, which was pretty new mechanic or a new counter that was introduced back in the wilds of Eldraine. And I used the Helldrain Queen to do all that stuff. Anyways, Sensational Spider-Man is also a Stax piece, and it also does proliferation, or it needs to do proliferation. And I got 5 cards that are highly recommended for you as you plan on deck brewing this commander. And if you're watching this video, this is in March, way before the set is released. Anyway, Sensational Spider-Man for 1 white and a blue is your new commander that I highly recommend. Let's get started with his abilities. 3/3 body, legendary creature, spider, human, hero. Whenever a Sensational Spider-Man attacks, tap target creature defending player controls and put a stun counter on it. Then you may remove up to 3 stun counters from among all permanents. Draw cards equal to the number of stun counters removed this way. So let's unpack this. You got Spider-Man on the battlefield. You go to your attack phase, your combat phase. When you attack, you can tap down a defending creature. Okay, that means that creature can't block. Okay, then you put 1 stun counter on it. Then you may remove up to 3 stun counters from among all permanents. Now, there's scenarios out there, there's cards that put stun counters on other creatures. So you can have 3 stun counters total, right? Then you draw cards equal to the number of stun counters removed this way. So that's possibly a minimum of what? Well, a maximum of 3 cards you can draw on each combat phase. That's not bad. And putting stun counters on creatures is more of a possibility and an effect that happens more often than you imagine. There's a bunch of stun counters on there on creatures that do it habitually. Okay, so don't worry. This is kind of a control theme, and the only thing you're limited to is the amount of creatures that are on the battlefield. However, if all your creatures are stuck in that webbing, which are stun counters, ooh, I just like the flavor with it. You can swing it for with damage with Sensational Spider-Man here for combat damage. And there's ways to boost his power with Voltron theme. Anyway, we're gonna move on to the control theme here. Yes, let's talk about it. Now, these are the 2 commanders that I was talking about from the Wilds of Eldraine set that place stun counters on creatures. My favorite over here to the left is Hylda of the Icy Crown for 2 white and a blue, 3/4 body human warlock. Whenever you tap an untapped creature an opponent controls, you may pay 1 colorless. Guess what? When her and Spider-Man on the battlefield, Spider-Man's attack trigger taps a creature and puts a stun counter on it. So now all you gotta do is pay 1, and when you do, choose 1. Create a 4/4 white and blue elemental creature token. Put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Or scry 2, then draw a card. Easy here. Easy. Next up, we got Charade of Numbing Depths. For 2 white and a blue, 2/3 body merfolk wizard. When she enters the battlefield, tap target creature and opponent controls and put a stun counter on it. Oh yeah, I guess I should read what stun counters do. If a permanent with a stun counter would become untapped, remove 1 from it instead. Whenever you tap 1 or more untapped creatures your opponents control, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. When she's paired with Spider-Man on his attack trigger during your combat phase, you get to draw a card. Easy as that. Easy as that. So you're putting stun counters and you're drawing cards, or you're doing other triggered abilities. So freeze in place is for 2 mana sorcery. Tap target creature and opponent controls, and then put 3 stun counters on it. Scry 2. This is a really good card, but it gets better if it has flash. That's the Leyline Anticipation over here on the right hand side is an auto include because there's going to be a bunch of cards that need flash. You just need to be able to catch your opponents off guard or while they're just enthralled with their turn, and you can just respond. Leyline of Anticipation for 2 and a blue, 2 mana and 2 blue. If it's in your opening hand, you can cast it for free. Otherwise, you may cast spells as though they had flash. Moving on to proliferation and stun counters. I meant to say proliferating those stun counters. That's what you want to do. Once you put a stun counter on a creature, you don't want it to become unstunned. So an inexonerable tide for 3 and 2 blue is an enchantment. Whenever you cast a spell, proliferate. The more stun counters on more creatures, the more cards you can draw, the more times they can untap. Next up, we have Thrumming Bird. Easy for 1 and a blue. 1/1 Phyrexian Bird Horde has flying. When it deals combat damage to a player, proliferate. It's evasive. Most players don't have flying creatures. So you deal 1, you get to proliferate and add a counter. Easy as that. Moving on to my favorite card. I just like the name of this card. Fear of Sleep Paralysis. For 5 and a blue, it's a nightmare enchantment creature. 6/6 body. Flyer. Then doesn't that sound fire? Yeah. It has the ability Eerie. Whenever Fear of Sleep Paralysis or another enchantment you control enters, and whenever you fully unlock a room, tap up to 1 target creature and put a stun counter on it. I'm going to be telling you the truth. When you have Azorious, you have enchantments. It's just obvious. Next up, it says stun counters can't be removed from permanents your opponent's control. So once a stun counter is on a creature, you get your last time that it has to be removed. It doesn't get removed. It just stays on there. So your creatures or your opponent's creatures are in fear of sleep paralysis. Moving on to cards you may have missed. Now, I think the name of this card is just hilarious. Borrowing 100,000 arrows. The only time I would ever need to say that is if I'm a pirate back in the day and I'm talking to somebody on the shipyard or the pirate docking bay and like, I need to borrow 100,000 arrows, matey. Something like that. Anyway, it's a sorcery that says draw a card for each tap creature target opponent controls. Yeah, yeah. They got 5 creatures that are tapped because they went out and did a combat phase where they went sideways and attacked all your opponents. You could draw cards off of that. Next up, we got Split Up for 1 and 2 white. It's a sorcery. Choose 1. Destroy all tapped creatures. Destroy all untapped creatures. It's kind of one-sided and it's kind of not. Kind of dictates how you want to put the position of the game into. Pretty good card. Moving on to the summary. Thank you for watching another episode of Breaking Brews. This is the Sensational Spider-Man, which I think is a very flavorful commander. I think it's awesome putting stun counters on creatures and watch your opponents wishing that they can untap their creature on their untap phase. And guess what? You stop that. And it gets super flavorful because that's like the webbing from Spider-Man. Then you get to draw up to 3 cards maximum if you decide to remove the stun counters from those creatures. But you're not going to do that because you're going to proliferate, adding more stun counters, allowing you to draw more cards. Hey, Sensational Spider-Man, if you liked the video, hit the like button. Otherwise, subscribe. Easiest way to support the channel.